My name is Jeff Chandler. I work at UWI as a senior technician for horticulture, and today we will be talking a little bit about plant propagation. Before we go on, most of the information that I'll be talking about comes from this book, Hartman and Kester, Plant Propagation, and it served me over the years for a long time. This is about the 7th edition of this book. Now, plant propagation, this is the art and science of multiplying plants, and it can be sexual or asexual. For the first section, we'll just deal with sexual means. And basically all that is that you have a flower that have male and female parts, or you have a plant that have male and female flowers, and they combine the genetic material and give you fruit and seed, and that gives you a new plant. Whereas in sexual propagation, there's no seed process, basically, and the material is either propagated by stem, leaf, root cuttings. Micropropagation is in tissue culture. And in that way, you get a clone, which is basically similar to the parent plant. Right? Now, when you're dealing with seeds, a lot of people feel that is difficult, but collecting seeds have been a fun time of mine. So I collect a lot of seeds. Now, you can collect seeds from fresh fruit or from dry fruit. I have in my hand a lovely tasting mammy apple. And depending on the size, you can have between 1 to 4 seeds in the mammy apple. And you can collect that from a mature fruit. A mature fruit probably just fallen, or you can pick it from the tree. You know when that fruit, how old basically that fruit is, and therefore you know how old the seeds will be. If you go collecting seeds that are from fruit that have dropped onto the tree, you don't know how long, then you have you won't be able to gauge how long those seeds have been there, the age of the seeds. And normally with the mammy apple, these are the seeds here, okay? They will take between 3 to 4 weeks to germinate. Right? Now, seeds come in all different shapes and sizes. The coconut basically, when you look at the coconut, the seed is actually inside. It's covered with husk, and the embryos, the growing point is inside the coconut. Right? Now that's large. Then you have small ones, small seeds. These are seeds of a cactus plant. Right? This is a melocactus. And the melocactus, this is what the melocactus looks like. Okay? And this is the fruit of the melocactus. The fruit of the mammy apple and the fruit of the melocactus. 4 seeds, and you probably have about 100 seeds in these 2 fruit. Okay? These are seeds from the aloe. Right? There are different species of aloe. There are a couple here, right? And they're collected dry. When I say dry, the fruit must be dry to collect the seeds. Right? Right? The fruit must be dry, and you can see them split open as well. That brings to mind the okra. The okra that we love so much in cuckoo. To collect seeds, the fruit must also be dry. They're going to split, right? Now the problem with that is that in cases, and the big word to use, when the seed dehisces, that means it allows the seeds to fly away from the plant. That's allowed them to propagate, right? You have to cover the fruit. And you cover it with a netting material, okay? And that usually occurs after the first fruit starts to open. Once the first fruit starts to open, you can actually harvest the whole stem, right? And collect your seeds. Okay? Now, storing the seeds. Sometimes you need to wash the seeds. In the case of the melocactus, right? they're usually surrounded by a sweet material. So you need to wash them. And the washing will get rid of that sweet material. If you don't wash them, then you can expect fungus to grow. Right? These are the fruit from the avocado, usually a single seed from a mature fruit. And you can harvest those. And my experience says that you should plant them straight away. Don't store their seeds. Okay? These ones, again, harvested dry. These are from the moringa tree. Okay? All right. And again, the seed pod will just split open and you can collect the seeds. Okay? Now, you will notice that I have them in tissue, and that's probably the best way to store your seeds, using paper. Right? These are radishes, 2 different brands, right? But they're radishes nevertheless. Okay. These ones directly in the package. Okay? These are directly in the package. While these ones from Yates, they're double package. Okay? So that silver foil. And basically, this is the type of seed that you would like to spend your money buying. Right? Seeds and moisture don't go together. This helps to protect them from the moisture. Right? Now, propagation of seeds, you can use different materials. You can use seed trays the conventional way. You can use your pet bottles, your egg crates, what do you want to do. The key here is knowing the seed and knowing how long it takes to germinate. Right? These are seedlings from the desert rose. I put back the plastic bag, because we use a bagging method to germinate the seeds. So you lay the seeds in, okay? I use a sand peat mix, and I put the seeds to lie flat and cover them, okay? Then I seal the bag. After you've moistened the material, you seal the bag, and within 1 week, the seeds start to germinate. Then you take them out. You don't leave them in the bag or they will elongate, meaning they will stretch, okay? The bag is just to keep the moisture in, right? And these seedlings are now 1 year old, right? For aloe and some other seeds, the smaller seeds, you don't need to cover, right? You just put them in, and you can use the same bagging method to retain the moisture. For things like pumpkin and cucumbers and that stuff, even the Miami apple, you can plant them directly in a pot and they will germinate. These will take about 3 to 4 weeks before they germinate. Right? Lots of times it has to do with your own experience. Don't let the material dry out, and basically cover them. Some needs light, some needs darkness. So after some experience, you read up as well, you'll find out which is preferred. Right? So basically that is seed propagation. Collecting seeds from the wild, the usual method is that you collect your materials, such as your paper bags. Avoid using plastic bags to collect your seeds. And the reason for that is basically they will retain moisture. You forget your seeds, and then when you go back, they're all full of fungus. Right? When I say collecting from the wild, it means just going around and picking up seeds, picking up fruit that's dried most of the times, and also knowing when which is the best method, to collect the seeds either from a fresh fruit or from an old fruit. Okay? Storing your seeds, you can refrigerate your seeds, but normally you need to have them in a tight sealed container. You don't want them to dry out. You don't want moisture to get in. Right? And basically that's it. Propagation from seeds, sometimes we come across seed dormancy. And seed dormancy is basically like a sleep process. The seeds go to sleep and they need to wake up. And there are different methods of doing that. You can actually take some seeds and rub them. You can treat them with acid, which we have done for some heliconia seeds, or you can simply soak those seeds. And we call that seed priming, where you can soak them overnight. Beet seeds, beetroot, actually would probably increase in about 3 times or 4 times its size after you soak them for 24 hours. And they germinate a lot better doing that. So breaking dormancy is important. Sometimes just simply washing the seeds is enough to break the cycle. Right? So all that you must bear in mind. So seed dormancy is important, and you need to know your seeds basically. Okay? In this section we'll deal with asexual propagation, and basically asexual is producing clones. So we have different methods. There's leaf cuttings, tip cuttings, root cuttings, leaf cuttings. We don't have all the examples here, but we'll go through some of them. Take, for instance, cassava. There's a stem of cassava, and what you have here, these are where the leaves would have come out from, and inside are what we call auxiliary buds. So there's where the new shoots will develop, and also the roots would have developed from those points. So you can take a stem cutting, right, which is usually about 8 inches long, and you can plant it different ways. Some people plant it at 45 degrees, some people plant it horizontal, and some people plant it vertical. I like the horizontal method, but it's all a choice. Very simple, stem cutting. Sugarcane also can be propagated that way. Okay? Now, although we mentioned seed propagation, you'll find that some plants you can produce from both seeds and from asexual means as well. Okay? Now, when you produce from seed, it means that you're not necessarily getting the same plant. When you produce from asexual means, it means that you're getting the same plant. Take, for instance, this award here. Okay? It has a flowering stem, so you can expect it to produce fruit at some point in time, and you can get the seeds and germinate the seeds. They most probably might be different, right? But you can also produce from divisions, because they send off what we call side shoots. Some people turn them babies, right? And they can be easily removed. You don't even have to cut them, right? Okay, that's right. And usually you get them off with a bit of root as well. So there you go. Right. Same thing with the aloe. Right. These are in the same family, and sometimes they cross-pollinate as well. Right. And these are all attached to the parent plant. Okay. So you have 3 new pieces that you can have now, 3 new plants. Right? Okay. Then you have things like this ginger. And this piece here is a rhizome. Okay? This is not the commercial ginger. This is our ornamental type called shampoo ginger, but produced the same way. Right? piece of rhizome. Okay. Now, in some cases, they'll tell you that you need to let this heal. But in lots of cases, it's just fine. It will not just rot once the moisture is okay, and it will grow just as quickly. Right? You can produce from the rhizome. It's the same ginger now, okay? Or you can produce it from a division. Okay? All clones of the same plant. Right? There's one member of this group where you can actually produce from stem cuttings as well. Right? We spoke about producing the seeds from, using the seeds to produce new plants from the desert rose. Lots of persons on the island will produce new plants using stem cuttings as well, okay? So you make a stem cutting. Right? What would happen in the case of using a stem cutting, the beauty with the desert rose is it have what we call a ball at the base, okay, a pseudo stem, a cortex. And in order for it to get a cortex, normally it will be propagated from seed. Okay? When it's propagated from a stem cutting, it takes very long to develop that. In fact, in lots of cases, not in your lifetime. Right? And this is what I'm talking about. If you look, you see how the base is swollen. Okay? You know it's produced from seed. Right? But you can also produce it from stem cuttings. In fact, if you take this piece off and stick it in a pot, it will grow, and then this will side shoot and give you a bushier plant. Right? We didn't say much about my beloved pineapple. Right? This is a pineapple. This is a pineapple, edible pineapple. Pineapples also can produce from seeds. They can produce from a crown, okay? And they can produce from side shoots as well. Okay? After you've harvested your pineapple and you take the crown off, it looks like this. You can just remove the bottom leaves. You don't have to. You don't even have to give it any rooting hormone or anything like that. Okay? And in many cases, you can actually see the roots beginning to develop as well. Right? So you just pot that in a nice potting mix, potting medium, and it will grow. This is the crown. Right? And the crown will take between 2 to 3 years, and sometimes the side shoots will take to give you fruit. The side shoots will give you fruit within a year. Okay? This orchid can be produced again from seeds or from divisions, where you will just take it apart and produce new plants that way. This is a Gymnocalcium. It's a cactus, and you can see the number of babies on it. Right? They can be easily removed. The spines are not as deadly as they look. They're very soft. And you can remove these babies. This one already is rooting. Okay? So it's already rooting. So you take these individually and plant them, and you can see how many plants, how many new plants you have. All right? Plant propagation. This little beauty here is called an echeveria. And this is the one that usually fascinates me the most. Right? You can propagate it by using a stem cutting. You can actually cut off the top part and get new growth, new plant, or you can use the leaf. Okay? And the leaves just place on top of the soil. They will form new roots and new plants. Just like that. Very easy to propagate. You can see from the amount of moisture that we have been having, it's been sending out roots all along the stem. Okay? And once that is occurring, you just cut it and set it. Now the rule of thumb is that once it's difficult to propagate by one means, it's usually difficult to propagate by other means. We're back to the desert rose again. The desert rose can be propagated from seed, can be propagated from cuttings. It can all be grafted as well. And grafting is another form of asexual propagation. It's used to produce a lot of citrus trees, the avocado, the mango. You can use what we call a wedge graft, where you get a young plant, you cut the top off, and the fruit that been tasting so nice that you want, you get a piece of that and you actually attach it to the root stock. That's what this will become. Right? So not to confuse you, you're not going to graft the mango onto the desert rose. You'll be grafting a beautiful desert rose, a different color, onto the base of this as well. Right? Okay. So, as I say, the rule of thumb, once it's difficult to propagate one way, it can be difficult to propagate the other ways. Bougainvillea, tip cuttings, and in some cases, you got to give them a little boost. So, the boost is rooting hormone. Okay. And there are different forms, different brands. Okay. They could come in a powder. Or it can come in a liquid form as well. Okay. And again, is knowing your plants and knowing how much to apply. For things like heirloom, the plants know that can be produced using what we call an heirloom method. And heirloom means that you're going to remove a part of the bark from the mother plant, okay, or the plant that you desire, and you're going to apply usually a rooting hormone to the exposed area, and then you're going to put some peat, moist peat around that area and seal it. Usually seal it with foil or plastic. Right? What would happen is that it begins to grow new roots, usually within 4 weeks. You take that off and you have a new plant. Right? So heirloom, grafting, all these are methods of clonal propagation. For things like the tip cuttings and the stem cuttings and the root cuttings, as in breadfruit, that's how you propagate breadfruit. You need to do a root cutting of breadfruit. because the breadfruit has been selected over the years and don't have viable seed, at least the ones that we have here. The other breadfruits or other species that would have, no. In order to do proper propagation using stem cuttings, you need to sometimes, back to the bagging method, but this time in a larger scale, you need to cover them. Sometimes you need to cover them with plastic to retain the moisture, and sometimes you need to mist them, keep the moisture up, keep them turgid, okay, so that they don't wilt and dry out. Right? So sometimes even roses, stem cuttings, you can use a sand medium to grow them in, but you need to keep them moist, especially in the first couple of weeks. Lots of times what happens is you plant them, you go to work, you forget them, they dry out, and you lose them. Right? Things like, they don't have any roots, so you have to keep the moisture up. Right? So basically that's it with clonal propagation. Yes, that's about it. So again, rule of thumb, if you've been going out collecting seeds, make sure that you have proper storage for the seeds, collect them properly, make sure that they're clean. As I say, use tissue, use paper to store them. In the cases of your vegetative material, make sure that you have good, clean material to start with. We have diseases in many of our crops, sweet potato, even the cassava, so you make sure that you collect clean material to start. Right? Ministry of Agriculture usually provide you good advice on selection. Thank you. To answer your question about why first-time propagation fails, or some of the common reasons why first-time propagation fails, the first thing is moisture. Lots of times, even growing plants, I think most people love plants to death, and they usually apply too much moisture. Okay? I came across recently about succulents, 25 succulents for easy, dead easy for indoor growing. Dead easy. And that's basically what happens. A lot of people just kill the plants from too much water. Okay? The other thing is, like in the seeds, if you collect immature seeds, then that is going to be failure. As I say, you need to know a little bit more about your plants. Sometimes also you need to treat your seeds. Don't forget they'll be sitting in moist medium for 4 weeks. And so they're having a little fungicide. My fungicide of choice is Captan. Captan, C-A-P-T-A-N. Usually from most of the hardware stores you can find it. And applied as a solution, right? Or you can apply it dry to the seeds themselves before you sow them. Right? There are some cases where I've heard reports of ants attacking the seeds before they germinate. Again, you can use insecticide like 85%, okay? And that should help as well. The other question about common plants that you can use.
Stop there.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a minute.
Okay.
And then go ahead and your next question or your like how you started this.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And to answer the next question, which is some ideas about common plants that you can use for propagation, especially for first-timers. When I was in primary school, we used to collect plants for what we call the nature corner. And we used to collect coleus, Joseph coat. And we would stick it in water in a jar in the nature corner. And within a week, it starts to root. So one of my recommendations obviously would be Joseph coat. Propagate is very easy. You can actually produce a plant for sale within 2 weeks. Okay. Most of these succulents will grow quite easy. We just had the aloe and we had the Howardias. Okay. Even although the desert roses takes a little time, these are a year old in growth. You can get, if you treat them well, okay, seed propagation is pretty easy, right? So, I wouldn't recommend the pineapple as a first timer. The pineapple usually, I would say it's a little more tricky, but it's not as rewarding initially. You need to get in the vibes of being rewarded, so I will leave the pineapple for later, right? But as I say, most of the succulents, yes, seeds, once you buy good seeds, you're gonna get good germination, right? Yeah. So coleus, most things from seeds, even the coleus, but I would not recommend the coleus from seed for beginner. I would recommend stem cuttings of coleus, okay? Yeah, you just asked about the stem cuttings, okay? Usually the rule of thumb is pencil thickness for some species, but when it comes to things like cassava, you want a pretty decent looking stem, right? You want to avoid any young shoots, and usually young shoots are at the top. So here you have the nodes are pretty even apart and numerous, so this is what you'll use. Right? A little bigger, obviously, than the pencil thickness, but you will only use these species if you lack material. And once you have a fair set of material, this is the area that you'll use. Okay. Right. The pencil thickness as a rule of thumb will be things like this. Okay. Most ornamental plants that are propagated from stem cuttings, you can use that method or that idea, or pencil thickness and bigger, right? Even from propagation using grafting and budding, pencil thickness for the stems of the root. We had a question about pot size. We're going to start with things like seeds. Normally, you buy a seed, you can get a seed tray, or you can use what we call an egg box. Okay, that's usually ideal size to start off seedlings. Things like cucurbits that grows pretty quickly, you want to make sure that they have a big enough space to develop. So you use a bigger cell. That's what we call them, right? The holes in the tray. So you use a bigger cell to do things like cucumbers, pumpkin, right? Because you're giving a little space. If you're not directly sowing them, because directly sow them into the field, or you can propagate them using a seed tray, right? If you're doing bigger plants, the rule of thumb is to select a pot that's going to give you a ½ inch to an inch of space around the plant to the edge of the pot. Okay? For stem cuttings, normally stem cuttings you're going to place in a bin and then you're going to take them out. Okay? For things like cassava, obviously you're going to plant directly in the field. For dried fruit, you're going to propagate in a bin. Right? If you're doing roses, normally you put about 6 to 8 cuttings in a 6-inch pot, and then remove them and plant them into individual pots. Individual pots, they will normally go into a 6-inch pot. because you're looking for a decent sized plant, which is usually between 10 to 12 inches before you actually plant it out into the garden. Okay. I want to thank NCC for inviting me to do this presentation, and I hope that you would use these techniques in propagating whatever you want to propagate when it comes to plants, and especially with Arbor Day coming up. I hope that you produce many trees from the little techniques that you have learned. Happy planting.